Really?
Yeah.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Government Operations Committee meeting for Monday, March 21st, 2022. Call roll, please.
Bala.
Here.
Payleitner.
Here.
Bongard.
Here.
Bancroft.
Here.
Lencioni.
Here.
Petrola.
Here.
Wirball.
Here.
Besner.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Thank you. We have one administrative item. Any question on video gaming statistics this evening? Okay, seeing none. On this vote, we have one item. So I have a motion and a second, please, for approval.
So moved.
Moved by Ed.
Second.
Seconded by Bancroft. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Payleitner.
Yes.
Bongard.
Yes.
Bancroft.
Yes.
Lencioni.
Yes.
Petrola.
Yes.
Wirball.
Yes.
Besner.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Good evening, Chief.
Hey, good evening.
One item. Recommendation to approve proposal for an A6 liquor license application for Circle K located at 2500 East Main Street in St. Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Slakaitis. So this also appeared earlier this evening at the Liquor Control Commission in advance with a 2-0 recommendation. This is the gas station at East Main and Dunham. It's going to expand to the east and take over the Corfu lot. So the convenience store itself is going to expand. With that, they're looking to offer packaged alcohol. This classification has been in place now for about 3 years. In fact, most of our convenience stores and gas stations offer this service. There was an initial request to possibly have a pour license and offer video gaming. I have talked to corporate. In fact, I spoke to Carol Owings about that from corporate in Indiana. They are no longer seeking video gaming. So this will be a packaged A6 license. They're seeking it now just to push forward with their blueprints and their plans to commence construction. Once again, it's going to offer packaged liquor sales only. The manager remains the same, Mr. Patel, out of Hanover Park. He cannot join us this evening, nor could corporate, but I did speak to corporate, like I mentioned. And like I said, this is in line with other licenses throughout St. Charles. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, I'm sorry, Chief, for not looking close enough. Do they currently have a package license?
They do not.
Oh, okay.
And their store itself is very
it's
small,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they want to offer that once they expand.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Motion. Yes.
Chief, are they merging with that building, or what are they doing? Are they just expanding into that?
I understand it's a complete tear down.
Mm-hmm.
Is Russ here? Yeah, I believe it's a complete tear down and expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question?
I'll make a motion to move it.
Moved by Steve.
Second.
Second by Besner. Roll call, please.
Bala.
Yes.
Payleitner.
Yes.
Bongard.
Yes.
Bancroft.
Yes.
Lencioni.
Yes.
Petrola.
Yes.
Wirball.
Yes.
Besner.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Item 5B, recommendation to approve the late night permits for 2022-2023 Class B and C liquor license of the City of St. Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Sakai. So this also appeared earlier this evening and advanced forward with a 2-0 recommendation. For the newer elected officials, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this tonight to kind of familiarize yourself with our ordinance and why we do late night permits and really the thought and methodology behind it. So each year, renewals take place administratively. So anyone who has an A package license all the way through, let's say, a site license like a D license can be handled administratively. They don't need council action. And those licenses are all licensed to end service or consumption or package sales at midnight. Those consumption on-site licenses, really B licenses, which are restaurants, C's are taverns, can stay open to either 1 or 2 o'clock respectively, so long as they petition the city for an annual late night permit. As part of that process, not only myself as the chief of police, but also all the department heads look at anything under their auspices to make sure that that business is in line with, let's say, their fees and bills owed to the city. Could be a zoning issue through Mr. Colby's office, maybe a fire code issue through Chief Swanson, and then, of course, police activity through me. We meet as a team. We look at the applications as they come in. Tracy and Sharon do yeoman's work on this because it's a lot of administrative paperwork. So this year, 29 licenses sought a late night permit. 22 of those are B licenses, 7 are C, 13 are seeking a 1 a.m. permit, and 16 are seeking a 2 a.m. permit. We did have 2 licenses from last year that did not want to renew their late night permit. They are still going to have a liquor license, that is St. Charles Bowl. They no longer want to stay open past midnight. And then Vintage 53 is changing their business plan. It's going to be more of a carry-out. They're going to sell some cheese, some fine wine and things like that, but they're not going to really be open late at night. In addition, one of those requests of those 29 is a new request, and that's Eden on the River. They've been in place now for a few years. They've expanded to their back patio, and they do a lot of special events, so they're seeking a 1 a.m. permit. We did have one license that, although not for a lack of effort, on behalf of the administrative staff, once again, a shout out to Tracy and Sharon, but also my team, and that is Spotted Fox. This has been a repeat customer. We have hounded him via phone, via email. We've sent staff in. He finally completed an application. It was not complete. So therefore, I am not asking for his renewal of his late night permit. We will do our best to try to make contact with him yet again and get him forward to the April 18th Liquor Commission meeting. And I guess we'll take it from there. We did have a couple outliers last year that had some fees owed to the city, and if we have any of those right before the commencement of the late night permit or the licensing, we'll take those to the Liquor Commission as well, and that'll be April 18th. With that, and what I'd like to talk about here briefly, especially for the new Alder folks, is if you draw your attention to the last page where I kind of go through the licenses. In years past, and this has kind of been debated by different council members, in years past, I've given you a myriad of police activity through the years. What's hard to decipher with that is, and I've stressed this during my tenure here for the last almost 8 years, is I do not want the liquor establishments and the licensed establishments to think they can't call the police because it's used against them. It's a tally mark. Therefore, we encourage the licenses to call us before situations take place. I'm proud to say that in the last year, and this is why I didn't really include some of that, because it's just, quite frankly, there's been so much improvement in my tenure that I don't think it's really necessary. In the last fiscal year, we have not had any action by the Liquor Commission whatsoever by any licensed establishment. We've also not issued any warning letters. Me and my entire command team, and Deputy Chief Pierce is here, we review each and every police report every day. We look at our watch logs every shift. We talk to our sergeants. We've really seen constant improvement. And like I said, I've been in office for almost 8 years, and exponentially we've increased our licenses during that time frame. And I believe our activity, as far as police activity, is greatly been decreased and diminished. And that's really a benefit of our owners working with us and our staff getting out and developing those relationships. So you won't see the material there. I can tell you that if I would have thought with my professional experience and opinion that something rose to the level of enforcement action, I would have done that with at least a warning letter through the mayor's office or a sit-down and an abatement meeting. We didn't get to that this past year. We had a really good year again. So with that, I'll answer any questions you might have, but I recommend the aforementioned late night permits.
Questions or comments from the committee? Rita?
Chief, do you attribute, well, I agree with you, the relationships is a big part of it, but maybe with the COVID closures over the last year, I mean, could that have doused things down a bit?
Yes, in 2020 for sure, not so much in 2021.
Okay.
We had some significant closures in 20. I think the outdoor space helped.
Yeah.
Especially our greater downtown. I think there was a lot more elbow room. But we really encourage our officers to get out on foot, and we have a really good relationship with security, especially in our greater downtown. So I think it's a culmination of a lot of things.
Okay.
But I'm really pleased with, and folks, there's alcohol service going on, so it's not going to be a perfect world, okay? I realize that. So there is going to be issues from time to time, but we're seeing constant improvement.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Can I have a motion in a second, please?
I'll move it.
Moved by Steve.
Second.
By Ed. Roll call, please.
Bala?
Yes.
Paylighter?
Yes.
Bonegard?
Yes.
Bancroft?
Yes.
Montioni?
Yes.
Petrella?
Yes.
Werbo?
Yes.
Besner?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. 5C, presentation concerning parking lot safety and enhanced security options. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. How are you? I'm Deputy Chief Pierce with the Police Department. Here tonight after, I believe it was November 1st of last year, a concerned resident came here and spoke under public comment about the parking garage that resident lives not too far from the parking garage, and here's the commotion that we do attract there. We've kind of termed it the attractive nuisance that we do have of the fifth level parking garage. Before I start, I want to remind everybody that this isn't a new problem that has come about, nor is it a problem that the St. Charles Police Department has ignored. We have installed cameras on the fifth floor. We've increased patrols and enforcement action. In fact, the cameras and the uptick in the patrols and enforcement action kind of pushed everybody down to the fourth floor, and that's really what the resident was talking about, was that the problem went to the fourth floor, and he was asking for a speed bump on the fourth floor. We've increased signage on the parking deck and installed fencing, guardrails, railing systems on the top, and done pretty much everything we can to make it ugly yet beautiful for everybody, and we still continue to have a problem. So also in November, I spoke about how I put in for a grant, or the St. Charles Police Department put in for a grant for cameras. Unfortunately, the grant is through the National Institute for Justice. However, they somehow contracted through a third party, and that third party, even though they said sometime in December that they would have a final decision, I reached out to the third party about 3 weeks ago, and they still had not made a decision on anybody getting any of the grants. So we're still in the dark on that. So I know that I believe some of my suggestions have been forwarded to you. I'm going to go over them kind of piece by piece here. A lot of them come straight from the citizen. I wanted to answer the citizen and his comments and some of the things that he brought up. So the first and foremost is the speed bumps. He came here asking for a speed bump on the fourth floor because he noticed that there what he thought was already a speed bump on the fourth floor. And in talking to Public Works, there is really it's a water feature that was built into the parking deck to stop drainage. And so though it acts kind of as a speed bump, it is not a speed bump. So to put a speed bump into the parking garage, we'd have to secure it in. We'd have to drill it in and secure it. And the parking garage, being a 5-level weight-bearing structure, is basically a living structure. So it expands, it contracts, and anytime we're going to drill into it, that's something that we have to worry about over the long run. The speed bump could be a short-term fix, and it may cost. I'll get to the cost, but the initial cost, really, what's the cost going to be down the road? What damage is going to happen years in and years out of thawing, heating, contracting, expanding, and we've already had the water feature had to be built because of the water that goes through the parking garage. Also, the fire department I would have to put the speed bump not where the water feature is to marry up with it. I'd have to put the water feature down because of that electric. I don't know if you know, on the fourth floor there's an electric car charging station. I have to put it to the north of the charging station because, and speaking to the fire department, if an electric car actually caught fire on there, the best way to battle that fire is actually to bring a tow truck up there. They put a blanket over the car and they drag the car out of the parking garage and take it somewhere else because the battery will smolder for a long time. So I can't put a speed bump anywhere that would interfere with that. And then we get into damage of private vehicles for speed bumps. If somebody comes in and claims that their car was damaged by the speed bump, or God forbid that somebody gets in an accident and wants to attribute it to the speed bump, where are we at the city liability-wise fighting that in the legal realm? So that's another cost that may be down the road if somebody damages their car, either going over it or it causes their vehicle to go up too high and take out something, again, either damaging the car and or the parking garage. But just to install a speed bump on the fourth floor would be around $5,000 initially, because we not only the speed bump, but then putting in, and also I don't know how much this necessarily would cost, but in speaking to Public Works, as part of that $5,000 is actually having somebody come out and look at the parking garage, where we have to put it, make sure it's not going into the steel that contracts and expands. So about $5,000 for the 4th floor, and then if we wanted to do it on the 5th floor, we're looking at anywhere from a total $15,000 to $20,000 to put speed bumps in. And again, that's just initially the speed bumps. Something the resident brought up was maybe staffing the deck with private security. So I reached out to 3 different private security companies. Only one of them called me back. And that's a common theme. I've actually talked to some other businesses in town. They can't get private security. Nobody's calling them back either. But for 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, without a vehicle, it's $109,000 for the year. With a vehicle, it's $128,000 for the year. And then 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, it's $130,000 a year without the vehicle, and $149,000 with the vehicle. So another solution besides hiring somebody from the outside, a private security firm, would be maybe a community service officer. So we could maybe kill 2 birds with 1 stone and have a community service officer downtown doing downtown parking enforcement with an emphasis on doing the parking garage. So for the sake of ease, a part-time person is much easier than adding a full-time employee. So I did part-time. For one CSO part-time, which is only 25 hours to stay under the cap for part-time, is about $37,600. And then if we do 2 part-time CSOs, so we can up that to 50 hours a week, that'd be $75,306. And then I went ahead and looked at paid parking for the parking deck. And while I was at it, I just thought I'd throw that in there, and to install kiosks and the chop gates and to all the bells and whistles that go with paid parking is about $300,000 for the install, all the stuff. And then after that, it's about $12,000 a year for a maintenance contract. So that brings me to security cameras, which the police department is actually, we're recommending that we go with the security cameras. I'll talk about the parking garage, and then also further, but the parking garage is, as I think I said last time, and then I think I sent you the quote, $51,190 to outfit 4th floor through 1st floor inside the parking garage. Now, I also went ahead and we have 2 cameras on the outside, north side of the parking garage that overlook the plaza. But those cameras are very old and really need to be replaced. And then, again, I'm thinking ahead here. We're almost coming to fruition, I think, with finishing 1st Street. We're still working on where the manor used to be, and then obviously the east side is really taking off. So as long as we're putting in cameras in the parking garage, I got a quote for a 4-head camera that we could put out on the main street, and then that would look back over towards where the manor is and Alter, and then look east and west on Main Street, and then also north on the Main Street. All right, and that would help us not only when we start doing more events downtown, but also for our parades. I don't know if you've noticed, but since last year, we've really stepped up. The police department is doing parades and parade safety much differently. You'll see that we're using the city snowplows. We're blocking each intersection with vehicles. So if somebody did try to come down any road, we're stopping them, or at least the best we can. But something else that goes into that is also surveillance. During the last parade, we have a command post, and so the being able to watch the crowd for anything suspicious would help us out. So those cameras are $15,625. That'd be for one side of the river, and then I'm suggesting that we also do that on the other side of the river as well, because we also know that we're looking to do something with the old police department, the Arcata, once that fully opens. I know Gracefully Ordinary opened up. There's going to be Duke's Northwoods. I mean, the east side is going to be just as busy as the west side, so I suggest that we do that. And then, this is my bad. I was thinking about it as I was doing this tonight. We have had some complaints about the Klinkhammer deck as well. There's no camera on the Klinkhammer deck, so I would say, we throw on about another $5,000 or so onto that. So basically, we're looking at about $90,000 if we wanted to do the whole package. But again, if we just wanted to do 4 through 1 on the parking garage, it's about $52,000, and then about $16,000 aside of town if we go to the expansion. I'd say probably about another $5,000 for the Klinkhammer deck, and that's what we are suggesting as a police department is the cameras.
Questions? Steve?
Thank you, Deputy Chief Pierce. Very good presentation, very thorough. I personally am all in favor for doing all the cameras. I think, safety is paramount. My question is what's the mechanism for storing the data? How long do we store the data? Because I know that to store video feed 24 hours a day does take up some storage.
Yeah. I recently gave up my flip phone, so you're asking the wrong guy on some of that. What I do know is that it depends on, I think we can set that and the quality of the video and all of that, but I did work with IS with these quotes, and so they know all the cameras that I'm looking at, and that was not anything that they brought up to me that they were worried about. I can certainly check on that and get back to you.
And I don't know the internal capabilities of the servers that you guys have internally. Maybe IT could help answer that question.
Yeah, well, we generally have retention policies that are set up, so I think what Deputy Chief Pierce is suggesting is that there's some conversations around the storage with that. We would probably follow our current retention policy, and then we would have the storage available for that.
Okay, so do we have server capabilities to store this for, 30 days, 60 days? How much? Yes? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Dave.
Chief, thanks for the presentation. I support the cameras, so that's great. It makes sense about the speed bumps. Certainly you don't want to jeopardize the integrity of the building, because you can hear it shaking and stuff. So what about using SSA? Do you happen to know can we do that? Or maybe this is a question for Nick. Is he still here? I don't even know. Oh, there he is. Can we use the SSA money for this?
Dave, I'd have to look into it.
Okay.
If I recall, one of the SSAs is for the parking in the downtown. Without researching it, my answer would be yes, but we'd have to take it from somewhere else, is my guess.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Yes, Brian.
I used to live downtown for about 10 years, and we had a parking garage down there, and they had speed bumps, and they lasted about 10 years. They were rubber, so I don't know if that makes a difference, because I would like to see a combination of cameras and speed bumps in that deck. I think there needs to be some sort of physical item like a speed bump to stop the drag racing and spinning the cars around, things of that nature. And on the bottom, it says recommendation, suggestion. It says come back to the city council in 6 months. What does that mean? On the very bottom of the memo.
I think, I'm not sure, that's not my memo. I'm wondering if that was from the last time?
Was it from the last one, you think?
Yeah.
I can step in. On the recommendation, it does say to purchase the cameras and then continue to monitor it, and 6 months come back to see if that has solved the problem.
I see. Okay. Thank you. So I'm in support of the cameras and the speed bumps. I think we need to do as much as we can to enhance our public safety in the deck.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm curious, do you know, and this is not exactly a fair question, so I understand, but if we caught somebody up there racing, what's the fine?
So the fine is ultimately set by the judge, so it depends if we actually are able to charge drag racing. So that could be, now you're pulling my knowledge here. Probably up
I know it's not a fair
to about $5,000 fine, but totally up to you.
I mean, if we put the cameras in and caught some of the people doing this, I mean, would we be able to use the cameras to catch them, and would those fines would we be able to use that to offset the cameras?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will tell you that any fine that is levied, unless we go straight local ordinance, and we don't really have a local ordinance drag racing, because drag racing would have to be reported to the state. So we really don't write moving violations under local ordinance because the state wants their part of it. And so, contrary to belief, when you write a citation or you arrest somebody, we do not see a lot of money out of that, because though it's a fine levied by our arrest, everybody gets their piece, and the state, the court, the programs that the state supports all comes out of that fine. So even, let's say, the best case scenario of $5,000, I would be surprised if we saw even close to $1,000 out of that. But yeah, sure. I mean, I think that the fines could go towards paying for the cameras.
Kind of in the same vein, but next one, because the last time I'd asked if we'd ever interviewed somebody in relating to drag racing, or anything that happened up there, and I knew that we weren't able to have the conversation at that time, but I'm going to ask you right now, in your professional opinion, with the cameras up there and we could see who was doing it, I mean, do you believe that would be sufficient to kind of find the people who are going there often and, stop it from happening?
It'll definitely help. I can't say that it's a slam dunk, because so in the court of law, we have to prove the person that did it. So just because it's your car, the defense attorney is going to come in and say, he's going to bring in all the friends, all the family, and say, do you drive that car? Do you drive that car? And we have to prove who's actually in that car. So the camera is going to give us a great jumping off point, because we have solved a lot of things from the camera so far, because the way we have it set up, we're getting the license plates coming to and from. So we're getting the cars. Yeah. It gives us a great investigative, but unless we can actually put that person in the car driving, it's not a guarantee.
Having to pay for an attorney is reasonably punitive on its own. So that sounds like it sounds like cameras are, put a solid dent in it. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. That's what I was asking. As long as I'm not making a bad assumption.
Yeah. No. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Rita.
First of all, the previous asked questions on the west half of the dais, let's call it a PSA for our high school friends. Get the word out, that we're getting on top of this. What issues are at the clean camera? There's not drag racing there.
No,
gosh,
no.
You can barely drive and turn around. I can't imagine that it's...
Yeah. Graffiti,
oh, okay.
Garbage.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
So, and, I want to echo, my colleagues for thanking you for the consistency. I think the drag racers were the straw that broke the camel's back here as far as this goes, because, it's a concession. We have a busier downtown, so we're going to have, more expenses attributed to that and more issues. So I'm glad we're getting a handle on it. And the camera's a great idea, all for it. But I also want to, once again, I've been a longtime proponent for the return of a downtown dedicated community service officer. I mean, not just the garage. I mean, Alderman Besner and I were nearly, assaulted by a bike rider doing tricks in the plaza. And I've heard from others there, and we can just look at the chipped stairways and cement that, skateboarders are an issue, bikers are an issue. And I think that the CSO would also curb that having not just camera eyes, but physical eyes. Somebody can say, hey, or just the presence there sometimes can eliminate those issues. And also, I think the cameras and a CSO officer, there's been, we've heard over the years, such and such company, their employees won't park there because they feel it's dangerous and it's dark. Here you go. Now we have a reason to say, we're watching your back and it'll be extra secure. So, thank you.
How many citations do we issue directly related to the parking garage?
Well, citations are tough because it is, though it's a public property, like I said, most moving violations are for the roadway. So we could probably only do equipment violations and some noise, and then of course like squealing and screeching of tires. I cannot tell you a number off the top of my head, but I'm going to tell you that it's not going to be high because of that situation.
So installing cameras might make people feel better, but there would really be no way to tangibly measure a reduction in whatever concerns people have, because we can't necessarily go up there and say, look, you know, we typically issue X amount of citations, or we see, look at the drop that we've made.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, but what cameras would help us do is, what I've done is I've set up, and this isn't going to be 24-hour monitoring, I'm going to tell you that, but our front desk recently, we expanded the hours, and then I've worked with IS to put up a monitor in the roll call sergeant's area, so when there are people in there, we're going to be able to see that they're up there, and it's going to help us and when we're out, and because we can't be on the deck obviously 24 hours a day, but it's going to be able to help us say, hey, there's somebody up there, let's try to get somebody up there now. And then also, again, it has helped us in some of those major incidents like real crime, track people down.
Mr. Sulkaitis, if I can just make a statement that might help just kind of put the city council or the committee's nerves at ease a little bit. We did write an additional CSO, community service officer, in this year's fiscal budget, 2022-2023, and that we will augment that position with some of the services that Deputy Chief Pierce provided. I have looked at the SSA question a number of times with previous financial administration, so I need to do that again with the new finance director, but we did research that SSA. We are hopeful, and we still are, that we're going to get that grant. That's why we were kind of holding off on funding it. Should that not happen, I believe we can access that, some of those funds at least to offset this purchase. And, you know, we've done, to DC's point, we've done yeoman's work with Public Works, with the rails, signage, lighting. We try to have our officers there as much as possible, but I want to make sure everybody understands that the cameras are going to be a deterrent as far as, you know, the young kids are going to see these cameras, but they're very tough to monitor 24/7 with, you know, the eyes in the sky, if you will, people watching the monitors, but it's great. It's a great tool for us to use after the fact. If we're not there and we can't monitor it in real time, I don't want to have a false misnomer out there that we're going to be watching, you know, monitors 24/7. However, should something take place, we've been very successful to now putting cases forth when there's been toilets thrown over the 5th level, vandalism and things. We've also cleared some offenses that have taken place elsewhere just by young men and women congregating at the parking deck. So we've done a lot of work, but it is an attractive nuisance. That's where kids come to hang out. They see us, and a lot of times they go somewhere else, and sometimes it's a different parking deck. I'm just being completely honest with you.
The chief basically, and it's not 24/7 monitoring, so it's only a deterrent. Catch them later after you know who it is, basically.
We'll do the best we can to monitor it, and we've expanded some of the responsibilities of our front desk clerks, but our officers are out there answering calls, and I don't want to mislead the council to let you believe or think that we're going to be monitoring the cameras 24/7. That is going to be tough to accomplish.
Agreed. There's no doubt about it. And we've got cameras in our building. It's always just after the fact, okay, what happened? And that's what it's going to be most of the time. Secondly, I think the speed bumps, I would like to see something portable on the speed bumps. Those rubber mallets or whatever, don't have to install the big heavy. Maybe it's temporary, because when it snows on the 5th floor, you're probably going to want to take them out or something. Summertime, I just think the speed bump, you stop them from speeding, you stop them from doing it, and they're probably, all they're going to do is hang out up there, not make a lot of noise.
Real quick to add on to what Alderman Paula said and what the chief had offered, PSA for our high school friends. You never know who's looking when. So just assume somebody's always looking at the cameras, right?
Mr. Paula, to your point and to everybody's point, I mean, obviously, I'm up here because you guys are the decision makers, so I'm just throwing out the options here.
Understood,
But
yeah.
for the cameras are more than twofold, but definitely twofold in that it's going to help us with parking garage related of what the citizen came up here, the loud noise and drag racing. But again, like I talked about, I think overall security for when we fully open up again and the downtown really is hustling. I will tell you that a lot of crimes have been solved on some of the cameras that we already have, some major crimes. And anytime we call the state's attorney's office, they always want to know, what do you have on video? Because the juries, the judges, want to see it on video. And if we have it on video, it helps us prosecute. And that does send a message. And like I said, with the fifth floor, once the cameras came up, and with our enforcement, but we did prosecute some people for not necessarily drag racing, but doing some stupid stuff and crashing up there, and I think the word got out because we came knocking on their door when there were citations and consequences handed out. So
I'm not against the cameras by any means, but deterrent would be the speed bump for speeding, for sure.
Mr. Soketa, so our recommendation at this point is really committee direction. We'd like to move forward with the cameras. With grants, we did throw some figures out with the grant of what we were going to install, and we didn't want to mislead the sponsor of the grant, should we do it ahead of time. So I guess what we're asking for is, do you want us to proceed now ahead of the grant or continue to wait? We would like to proceed because obviously this is an issue that we would like to enhance our security and safety measures. And then we would come back to you once those are installed to report, what type of activity that we're seeing, and obviously the CSO, once that person is brought online, will augment that. But our initial ask tonight is to move forward with the cameras, whether that be with SAA funds, city funds, or if we just wait for the grant.
So the only comment that I have is, and I'm all for the cameras, is wherever you can throw a video surveillance sign, throw it. I mean, because people don't notice cameras as well, but they see a big sign that says, you're under video surveillance.
Yep.
Not a surprise.
We'll do.
Ed, you have spoken.
Okay, thank you. So you talked about the speed bumps. How I don't know if I missed it, but how long are they? Do they go across the whole width of the parking deck on the fourth floor, or is there more than one? It sounds like there's only one, so I'm trying to figure out the scope of that.
No, well, so I did the price that I gave is fourth and fifth floor, and it's about as wide. So when you're coming down the row and you have the parking on either side, it's almost as wide as the row that you're driving. So obviously it won't be in the parking area, but it'd be the drive lane.
Yeah, and you're talking just one on one side or one on?
So on the fourth floor, we basically just need one. Because like I said, the water feature, though it's not a speed bump, it does act as one. And then I'm looking at probably about four on the fifth floor, because that is a wide open.
Okay, no, that would make sense. Because I am completely 100% in favor of putting some speed bumps up there. With no disrespect to anybody in this room, I know the council's talked about it. Everybody's been involved with your input in your department, the chief, et cetera. But it's been going on for 2 years, and everything's been done well right now to the point that we have nobody hanging on the ledges. I was out there, I saw it all. Nobody's throwing stuff over. So I guess that's a good thing, of course. But I don't know if we're not. I think going back to Alderperson Bala, if we're not able to monitor 24 hours a day, as much as they want to be up there and as much as we're up there, one of us is going to win. And unless I know I mentioned it at our retreat, unless we see some kind of patrols that are going up there, whether it's every 3 or 4 hours, maybe it's 2 hours, maybe it's 5 or 6 hours, that's the only answer outside of cameras. Cameras are good. It'll be good for the whole future of the plaza. I'm all for cameras, but I'd like to see some speed bumps up there for sure. Absolutely.
Chief, in your research, again, back to the cameras, again, I support the cameras, and if a motion is needed, I'll make a motion and let's move forward with these cameras now, but can they facially recognize people and stuff like that?
I'm not 100% sure. They are a Motorola, product, and they do some cool feature. They do have some AI in them, but I don't think in Illinois that we can have facial recognition, so.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yeah, okay.
Too bad.
Do we need to make a motion to give you guys direction on what we want to, okay, so is everybody else done?
Hold on, I want to see,
Oh, yeah.
any more comments here?
Is it already, I'm sorry, did we say this has already been worked into the existing budget?
So the community service, so when I did this, obviously it was November, and before the budget, but yes, in the budget, we have our community restitution officer who's part-time.
Right.
We've kind of written another part-time CSO that he's gonna fulfill. And that's in the budget right now.
Okay.
Right now.
The recommendation we're seeking tonight is to concur with Deputy Chief's recommendation to move forward with security cameras. That's the direction we're looking for tonight.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion to move forward with the security cameras and the speed bumps.
I'll second that.
Moved by Brian, second by Ed. I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
On this motion here, are we directing staff to work on all the cameras you're requesting for $82,440, or just the deck?
All of the cameras for 82,000, yes.
And is this going to include more information on the speed bumps? That's part of the motion?
I'm making the motion to have speed bumps installed on the 4th and 5th floors.
At a staff level, we are not ready to proceed with the speed bump recommendation. We were here tonight to seek direction on the camera specifically, and we can come back with discussion on the speed bumps. But tonight, we want to at least move forward with the cameras and get those installed.
Then I'll modify my motion to move forward with the cameras and come back with information on the speed bumps.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Steve, motion by Brian. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Bala?
Yes.
Paylighter?
Yes.
Bongard?
Yes.
Bancroft?
Yes.
Lancioni?
Yes.
Petrola?
Yes.
Wirball?
Yes.
Besner?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. We got direction now from that. Okay, item 6A. Okay, recommendation to approve an ordinance amending ordinance number 2021-M-45 with regards to the deferred imposition of a municipal push tax on plays of video gaming terminals until October 31st, 2022. Good evening.
Thank you. As you will recall, October 31st, the City Council passed an ordinance regarding imposition of a municipal push tax. That was in response to Senate Bill 3136 that was passed on October 27th, 2021, giving us until November 1st, 2021 to actually pass an ordinance imposing this tax, otherwise waiving our right. At that City Council meeting, we did pass that and preserved our ability to implement the tax. The executive summary, as the executive summary states, this was not intended to negatively impact any of the businesses, and I know the mayor made a very strong statement supporting that position as well. We are asking to defer the imposition of that ordinance until October 31st at this time. There is still currently a lawsuit pending against the Village of Oak Lawn, and no guidance has yet been given by the state regarding the implementation of this municipal push tax, regarding how the actual operators would have to do this. So we are seeking to defer that until October 31st at this time. And I just want to make it clear that if no action is taken this evening, or if you vote no on this, that tax would start May 1 currently. If you vote yes on the deferment of that tax, we would wait until October 31st. We do anticipate this will likely get pushed out again just because of the time it's going to take to work through some of these issues, but we figured at least 6 months would give us enough time to assess it and then bring a recommendation forward to defer it again if needed.
Question,
Yes. So help me understand, voting against this would actually cause the tax to be put in place?
Correct, because right now the ordinance has been approved, is on the books for a May 1 effective date. So the ordinance before you this evening is to push back the effective date to October 31st by 6 months.
Okay, so my question is going back because, so we originally passed this?
Correct.
Conditionally, correct?
It was passed to preserve our right. We had to actually pass it and have an effective date in the ordinance, so that was just the nature of how the ordinance had to be structured. So we put a May 1 effective date in there as a placeholder, essentially, knowing that we would continue to monitor that legislation as well as litigation to determine if we needed to push that date out.
Okay, so, bringing everything back around, I would also, next time this comes before, if we pass to defer, I would also like information on what we want to do if we want to repeal.
I'm happy to do that if that's the direction of the mayor and council. If we do repeal this, we will lose our ability to implement this at a later date. So right now, the fact that it is on the books allows us to continue to have those discussions when we decide to implement it. Right now, it will not go into effect. There will be no additional tax imposed. It's just still preserving our right on the books right now.
Okay, because there is tax in place, and I'm about to be done, tax in place, and right now I can say that I don't believe that this tax is going to be in the best interest of the businesses, and I don't think that this is a good place for us to be looking for additional tax revenue.
And like I said, I know the mayor and the council felt strongly that they did not want this to negatively impact the businesses, and if for some reason that implementation comes out and the guidance on that shows that it will negatively impact the businesses, that will certainly be up to council's discretion to repeal it at that time. But until we know how that will be implemented and have all the information necessary to make that decision, my recommendation is we keep the right on the books and we preserve that right and just continue to defer the effective date.
What are the chances in 6 months that the outcome that you're hoping to avoid, that it negatively impacts businesses, is likely going to happen no matter what?
My personal opinion is it's unlikely. I think it's going to be some time beyond that.
I'm sorry.
I think it's going to be a while before both the legislation and litigation are resolved. I think it's going to be longer than 6 months.
Okay.
But at this point, even if we continue to defer it, there is no implementation, no effect on the businesses. They're continuing status quo business as is currently.
Okay, so you're asking for the deferment, is that because of the lawsuit?
Correct.
Okay.
And there's no guiding legislation from the state on how to actually
So the state hasn't fully pulled the trigger on it either.
Correct.
And as far as impact on businesses, every month we get a report on how well businesses do because of this. I find it hard to believe that this is going to be a burden on the businesses. I mean, it may be the technology, you know, that's to be determined, I guess, by the state, but a financial burden, I don't see it. They make tons of money on this, and we get nothing really. So that's my opinion on that.
So, sorry, you lost me a little bit. So are we going to be able to avoid hurting businesses? We keep kicking the can down the road. This push tax is going to take money away at some point. It's a matter of, do we want to move forward with it 6 months, 12 months, whatever that might be. To Rita's point, there's money, in these systems, people are playing the games. Like, are we kicking the can down the road because we don't want the inevitable conversation of where we're trying to avoid going? And if that is the case, to Paul's point, then maybe we should be having a different conversation.
Some of that, I believe, depends on how it is able to be implemented. It's similar to a tax on food, beverages, sales tax, anything like that. Certainly, most businesses pass that along to the consumer of that product. So depending on how that guiding legislation comes down, if they're able to actually do that versus X dollars off of their profits at the end of the month, I think that will give some more information to allow the council to make a more informed decision on how that's impacting the businesses.
Steve.
Thank you. So if we vote yes to defer now, does it automatically kick in October? And then the city, we do make money from this, between the money we get every month from, people gambling and then the fees and the permits. I think we make $350,000 a year from the poker machine, so it's not like we don't make money from it. That's the way currently. It's not bad, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Correct. That is how it is set up right now, but we are monitoring this at both city attorney as well as the staff level to make sure that we understand how this is going to impact the businesses as well as how this will roll out. So we will continue to advise you on that. And if we get to a point that we at least have guidance, we can make the determination whether to continue or not.
Just some clarity. How much money have we made with video gaming over the life of it since it's been installed? Isn't it like $350,000 over the life of it?
No, that's what we make a year.
Is that a year?
About $800,000.
$800,000 over the
We went live in 2016.
16, okay, all right. I have no issue with your recommendation here at all, so I'm fine with it.
Other questions? Hold on, anybody else over here?
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, if we're deferring, and you're promising, I guess, you know, data to help us make additional decisions in October, then let's defer, so.
No, this is the years.
One thing that I would like to add in all this is, we're also voting on something we don't understand.
That's it.
You know, if that data is how many pushes we have, because what's gonna happen is anytime you tax something, you're taxing the entire pool of money wagered. And so, let's understand how many pushes those are. Because what's gonna happen is, that tax revenue takes money out of the entire pool that's being wagered, so you get less wagers, you know, and that money gets removed from, you know, money wagered with a portion going to be taxed into taking it, sending it straight out to the tax. It's pretty complex math.
And I think that's an excellent point, because right now, we're not receiving enough of the data to understand how that will actually be implemented to those. So that's part of the rationale, which we want to see what the state comes back with how to do that and what data we receive to better understand it. So I'm in no way saying that this is exactly what we need to do moving forward, but I think that we at least need to preserve our right and understand the impact before that decision is fully made.
Thank you, Ron. I just want to make sure that there's a mechanism in place that, you know, should we defer, that this does not automatically kick in October. Is there a mechanism that we can vote on with that? Because there's nothing right now that I can currently do.
I'm going to defer to Nick, but I believe we're going to have an effective date in the ordinance to make it a valid ordinance.
Yeah, normally, once you pass a tax like that, it takes effect 30 days after the fact. We deferred it back in November 1 to this out date because of litigation. By November 1, absent some other action by this council, whether to repeal or to extend or defer, everyone's going to have to do their homework about working with the gaming board to figure out how to monitor and how that tax will be levied against all those pushes. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done legislatively in order for this to come into effect on November 1. If we don't have it and the litigation is settled, you'll still have to defer it again because we don't know how to implement the tax.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. I have a motion and a second, please.
So move.
Moved by Brian, seconded by? Second. By Bancroft. So the motion is, if we vote yes, we are extending it to October 31st. If we vote no, it will take effect May 31st, but yet we can't collect the money because we have no mechanism.
Correct, absent some other action, correct.
Thank you. Okay. Roll call, please.
Bala?
Yes.
Payleitner?
Yes.
Bongardt?
Yes.
Bancroft?
Yes.
Lencioni?
Yes.
Petrola?
Yes.
Wirball?
Yes.
Besner?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, now we have item 7B, recommendation to approve an ordinance reserving and authorizing the transfer of volume cap in connection with the private activity bond issues and related matters. Good evening.
Thank you. Annually, the city receives from the state of Illinois through the IRS a volume cap allocation, which is essentially private activity bonds, tax-exempt basis that can be used to fund private activities such as subsidized housing, non-manufacturing uses, and other purposes. This private activity bonds is not an obligation of the city. It's simply passed on to someone else that can use it and benefit from the tax-exempt financing. The city's allocation received for calendar year 2022 is $3.6 million. Historically, the city has reserved its volume cap allocation, which is what the decision needs to be made tonight. And that way the city has the option to use it or transfer it to someone else or give it to a private entity to encourage an eligible redevelopment activity. Historically, it's been difficult over the years to find people that can use this volume cap allocation, primarily because interest rates have been so low over the last 15 years. Tax-exempt versus taxable financing doesn't really have the same benefits that it used to. Nevertheless, we're recommending reserving the volume cap, evaluating it, and seeing if we can possibly use it later this calendar year. And this ordinance would essentially reserve it, and that needs to be into the state by May 1st. Any questions?
Questions or comments from the committee? Can I have a motion and a second, please?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Brian, seconded by Dave. Roll call, please.
Bala?
Yes.
Payleitner?
Yes.
Bongardt?
Yes.
Bancroft?
Yes.
Lencioni? Petrola?
Yes.
Wirball?
Yes.
Besser?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes. 7C, presentation of the fiscal year 2022-23 budget. This is for information only, there will be a
Yes.
vote taken.
So tonight we have a short 20-slide presentation to discuss the budget for fiscal year 22-23. This will all be emailed to everyone, so if there's any questions after the fact, as we'll go through it somewhat quickly, you can please let us know. Are we all set, Tracy?
Yep.
Okay. So as a reminder, the budget ordinance changes we're enacting this year. We're going to present the ordinance in 2 weeks, budgeted by fund, including the internal transfers as presented in the packet tonight. We spent a lot of time focusing on cash flows, so we're trying to match those with the capital activity, especially in the utility funds. It's kind of been one of our focuses this year. We discussed consolidating several minor funds, including additional budget year data and actual data from the prior year, and removing out-year projections, but doing those projections at a later time, but just not including those in the budget document. Sorry. There we go. Reminder of some of the overriding economic and fiscal influences for the budget. We had tax recovery that was stronger from COVID, especially with sales tax revenues. Since the workshop, we've had to adjust where the ARPA funds were best recommended to be at. We decided the $4.4 million was best for the wastewater fund, given the level of capital projects that need to be done in that fund. We've had positive economic indicators, inflation concerns that have affected us both on the revenue side with sales tax revenue, and as well as the city's operating side with increased cost of operations and capital projects. So as we discussed before, those are some things that we're going to continue to monitor. And as we've experienced last week, we did see the beginning of the federal funds rate increasing, effective this current month. The total revenues in the budget, excluding pension funds, are $202 million. Total expenditures, $213 million. That's a little bit less from the prior year due to some bond refinancing proceeds and refundings that we did in the prior year, artificially increasing those numbers. A lot of data here, but essentially just wanted to point out that revenues are down 15% from the prior year. That's really because of the decrease in the bond proceeds and the IEPA loan proceeds from $63 million to $20 million in the proposed budget year. Sales tax revenue and use tax revenue up 3.6% in total, and property tax revenue up 2.9% as some of the main drivers as for the city's revenue overall. On the expense side, our expenses are down 9.7% at $213 million. Again, some of that one-time activity that we talked about before. Personnel services up 6.2%, and capital up 3.6% at $54 million proposed in capital projects for the upcoming fiscal year. This current fiscal year, we started off with the general fund, planning to use $3.3 million in reserves if needed. As things improved over the year, we wound up with a positive, roughly $2 million general fund revenues exceeding expenditures for our projections for the current year. And that's higher than we initially talked about at the workshop last time. What we wanted to do, as indicated in the packet, was transfer additional $1 million this current fiscal year to the capital projects fund in order to fund future capital projects, increase the subsidy for the refuse fund, and transfer an additional $360,000 to the vehicle replacement fund to help replace some of that funding that was missed in the prior year. So overall, good year for the general fund with those additional transfers and remaining just about $500,000 in the black. This just shows general fund revenues and expenditures over the last 4 years, including the upcoming budget year. We're projecting our fund balance as of April 30th right now to be about $26 million. That's about 48% of total expenditures and transfers out, which is a good, healthy reserve level. That does not include $4.2 million that the general fund has advanced to other funds, such as the TIF funds, over the years. So that would be net of that. Allocation of our general fund revenues and expenditures by source and type. You can see sales and use tax, that's roughly 45% of all general fund revenues, just under $25 million, so clearly the largest revenue source for the general fund. And you can see the allocation to our various functional areas off to the side. Fire, $13 million, police about $16 million, public works services, $8 million, and the rest about 15 million between city admin, finance, IT, community economic development, and then various transfers out. This just shows our general fund revenues by source and how they've changed over the last 4 years. You can see our largest revenue source being sales and use tax. You can see the increase that we've received in the last year, and that's been the main driver in the overall financial turnaround, if you will, for the general fund this current fiscal year and looking into next year. Most of the other revenue sources, we're seeing some increases in it, but for the most part, a lot of them are roughly flat, such as the alcohol tax. Other revenues are down since COVID and projected to stay that way next fiscal year. And then you see some of our other revenues remaining roughly flat or some minor increases overall. This breaks down our sales tax revenue by our 1% and our 3% cannabis tax revenue, and our red line being our home rule sales tax revenue that's all recorded in the general fund. These numbers ticked up a little bit higher for the current year since we last talked about them at the budget workshop. We're looking at a 17% increase in sales tax revenue in the current fiscal year for our 1% and 3% cannabis tax, and a 28% increase in our home rule sales tax. So those increases have really helped to shore up the overall operating ability to fund some capital improvements in the current year and next fiscal year. And this shows the expenditures by type over the last 4 years by functional area in the general fund. We discussed these at the previous budget workshop, so these are still in effect. The non-union market and merit increases, as well as the collective bargaining agreements currently locked in for next fiscal year. Our total FTE staffing increases next year is still the 4.21 for a total of 275 FTEs for next budget year. Summary of our capital projects, again, roughly $6.8 million in total between our MFT funds and our capital funds, doing roughly 4.9 miles of roads, and many other capital projects discussed the previous workshop session, including IT initiatives, road improvements, and various studies. Quick summary, these are special revenue funds, so just kind of summary of the beginning fund balances, revenues and transfers in, expenditures and transfers out, and where those funds sit at the end of the year. Just want to note for the motor fuel tax fund, we have received additional MFT revenues from the Rebuild Illinois program, which is why we have a slightly higher than normal road program for this coming calendar year, using $2.3 million in MFT revenues to help get that road program going. On our internal service funds, just want to mention that these funds serve the other city funds, our inventory, vehicle replacement, and our different insurance funds. Just wanted to note the $1.5 million deficit in the health insurance fund. That's because we're, as a reminder, we're doing a 2-year closeout of that fund. Since the city is switching to IBBC, we no longer need to have a self-insurance health fund going forward. Overall, in our electric fund, we have roughly $69 million in revenues and just under $70 million in expenditures. The electric fund is in good overall financial shape, ending the year roughly with $26.6 million reserves. On the water side, we're looking at about $14.4 million in revenues, just under $18 million in expenditures, which include just under $10 million in capital improvements next year, funded roughly by $5 million in bond and IEPA loan proceeds that were issued in the prior year and we're just getting around to using in the upcoming year. You'll notice the increase in water user charges revenues as due to the rate increase being recommended in the budget, summary of which I'll be going over shortly. On the sewer fund, we're looking at $32 million in revenues, $36 million in expenditures, and ending the year with roughly $5.7 million in reserves. We looked at these before. This is the summary of our major water and wastewater capital projects. The ones in progress being the combination of L7 and 13, the West Side Treatment Plant expansion, and the Riverside Lift Station reconstruction recently underway. This is a sample monthly utility bill based on the recommended rate increases. As discussed previously, recommending a 12% water rate increase, 5% wastewater, and no increase on the electric charge. It's roughly about $10 on a monthly basis for a typical customer. And lastly, just a quick summary on our police and firefighter pension funding as well as IMRF. Moderate increases in the city's required contribution next fiscal year due to some positive actuarial returns over the prior year. We also fund our IMRF. Right now, about 10.3% is required city rates, and those costs are roughly $2 million annually. So I know I went through a lot. Obviously, if there's questions, please ask. The information will be on the email to everyone later. And appreciate everyone's help in the process, especially with the vacancies we've had. Administrator McGuire, Colleen, all the department heads as well.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? Brian?
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. So we have the spring cleanup going back in the budget, which a lot of people are excited about having that. Is that going to begin in May? We approve the budget this in 2022?
Yes, I believe it's starting in May. That's correct, right?
Is that?
Peter is working on getting those dates scheduled, but June.
But it's going to be coming May or June. Okay, great. And then you have two numbers in there. It says transfer of an additional $1 million to the current fiscal year and $300,000 to the next for capital projects. What specific projects are those for again?
They're not designated for anything in particular. It was just to set aside the funding now so it can be discussed later, either next fiscal year or later in the year, what capital projects are out there. So really it was excess sales tax revenue that we wanted to set aside now for future capital projects, especially given the fact that we don't have a lot of dedicated capital funding resources right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, this is for information only, so.
Yes.
No more questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
For the presentation.
Yep.
Any public comments tonight? Any other comments from the mayor?
Oh.
Committee?
Good.
Staff? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Second.
Moved by Paul, seconded by Dave. Roll call, please.
Bala?
Yes.
Paylighter?
Yes.
Bongard?
Yes.
Bancroft?
Yes.
Lencioni?
Yep.
Petrola?
Yes.
Wirball?
Yes.
Besner?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes, we are adjourned.
And they get
So they get 40.
Nobody knows. I agree. One to repeal it in 6 months. Peter.